luck.
Yes. Okay. We are live. Okay. Hi, good evening, and welcome to the Town of Norfolk Board of Health meeting, September 30th, 2021. So this evening, we are going to discuss first our public hearings with 11 Leland Road. So I have a preamble to read. A variance hearing from Board of Health Regulation is called to order for 11 Leland Road. It is my duty to inform you that you will have to provide the Board of Health with data to support your request for a waiver of Board of Health requirements, and that if you do not receive the waiver, it will do you manifest injustice. You will also have to show that what you intend to do is environmentally acceptable. So, Mr. Neva, are you here?
Jim, you just need to unmute yourself.
It's like the screen's frozen.
He does.
How you doing? My name's Jim Neva from Dun & McKenzie. We're seeking a a variance for the cover of a proposed septic system replacement. We're asking to any depth from 36 to 72 inches. The reason why is because the existing pipe coming out of the rear of the house cannot be changed, only because all the components inside the house, and there's a lot of fill in the backyard, so we're trying to maintain the existing outgoing pipe and use the sea layer that is there, you know.
So that was your description of what is going on at this time. And we have Wade Saucier here. We can discuss what he...
Yes, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Wade?
Sure. Hi. Good evening, everybody. Again, thank you for letting me attend through a Zoom meeting. It's very convenient for me, so I do appreciate that. Even though I'm on that huge screen in your room, which
Well, I'm glad you got home in time, because he was literally in my
Just gotta be
office
kinda-
until like 20 minutes to 6, so.
yeah. So the applicant is looking to put the system deep into the backyard, and part of it is as Jim mentioned, the existing plumbing's low. It's an old house, and to change the plumbing up would be probably very expensive. The applicant also tried to work in the front of the house too to make it a gravity system. Jim and I talked a lot about this when we were out on the job site and also on the phone. And the homeowner actually made a second attempt and went out in the front to look for more desirable soils. As you can see, from the backyard to the front yard, it's a down gradient. And Jim was thinking possibly about making it a gravity-fed system from the backyard to the front. When we went out in the front, the soils were really silty, sand, loamy sand, which wasn't very desirable, where the back was a lot better. Also, Jim was trying to go in the front to avoid any conservation, meetings also, just trying to make it more in compliance than into variances, a local upgrade or conservation commission meeting. So he's in the backyard. The soil's a lot better. It is pretty deep, but it's still an expense for the homeowner. There's a huge excavation out there. Access to the backyard is going to be expensive, and I think he's looking more for economic relief, if anything, in the system. The state also allows pre-existing systems to be deep in the ground, probably because of these particular reasons, just because of the expense and the certain different circumstances that that the homes have. And this particular one has a lot of fill in the back, which has to be removed, and things would have to be trucked into a really narrow area. It doesn't look like it on a plan, but it's a lot of old, mature vegetation that they would have to work through, and it's also slanted in the back. Title V allows this to happen. You have to have a heavy load septic tank. Your distribution box has to be a heavy duty distribution box, and your trenches or your leaching facility has to be vented to the atmosphere, which Jim has provided in his design. So everything there is there accordingly to the relief that the state gives you, and you can only get it through a local board of health hearing, which is here tonight. So the applicants are seeking more for like economic relief from you guys for this design. I'm here for if you have any questions.
So you feel that the plan had come up with is adequate and has your approval?
Yes, I would recommend approval, Madam Chairman. Yes, I think it's a good design. And it's also a multiple attempt for the engineers trying to make a system into compliance, and this is the best they came up with, and it seems it fits the property. This is what they're going to come up with, and through the economics, I think this is a good design. Yes, I would recommend approval.
Any other board of health members have any questions for Mr. Saucier?
Wait, just one question. In terms of the Concom approval for this project, does that have to come first before our approval in case they find that they need to move things around, or is this something that we could conditionally approve based on the Concom filing?
You can conditionally approve this based on the Concom's recognition of the wetland line, because that's actually in the local regulations that before the permit's signed, you look for a written concurrence from the conservation that the wetland that's designated on the septic plan meets their approval. And so that's what you'd be looking for. The applicant could go to ComCom and say, this is what the Board of Health's accepted. They're okay with it going in the back. And actually might even be good information because the front of the yard was undesirable. It's a huge piece of property, and the conservation could say, well, put it in the front, keep it away from our wetland. But the engineers have attempted to work in the front, and they didn't come up with any good results. So this seems to be the best place for this upgrade for a pre-existing house. There's no plumbing needed inside of the house, I believe, and it's low coming out of the house. So yes, I would recommend approval with conditions that the conservation recognizes the wetland as true, as shown on the plan.
Yeah, I just don't want to have them go to the Concom and then have a back and forth, and then they have to come back here for either clarification on their part. But if there's something that we can sort of make sure the Concom understands that this is pretty much it, I think that's what we would I think that would be most agreeable for all parties involved, at least for this board's preview.
That's a really good point. That's a good point. You can't control another board. You can't control the individuals on that board, what they're going to think and they're going to say, what they're going to want to vote on. But giving this a permit approval to this applicant with the condition that you're looking for, that the wetland delineation be true, pretty much it gives a big statement to the conservation board. This is what the Board of Health agreed to.
Okay. Yeah, just something make it simple,
That was
saying that.
my opinion on it.
Yeah, I think to avoid a back and forth, which may not occur, but at the same time, they may find something, or they may see something, or they may have some issue that may come up. That again, I can't speak for what they're going to think about this, but again, I remember from my Concom days that we used to usually rely on the Board of Health when they approved a septic system that was in the buffer zone or at the edge of the buffer zone. So okay.
All right, so we should have a motion for our local upgrade approval for 11 Leland Street in Norfolk.
With the appropriate variances.
The appropriate variances, yes.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, our motion has passed for the local upgrade approval with variances for 11 Leland Street.
And Chairman of the board, members of the board, the permit won't be signed off until we hear from COMCOM, a written concurrence, which is what local regulations require. And sorry I didn't put that in the letter. But that's part of the process too. So you'd be waiting. You'd have to. I'm sorry.
We're on. I believe we're on the conservation meeting for October. And we filed for that. October 13th. Yes. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so now we move on to our appointments, and we are just right on time. We're supposed to have a meet and greet with the new town council, Tom Harrington of Miaris and Harrington LLP.
Hello, Madam Chair. Tom Harrington. With me is my colleague, Alexandra Rubin. Kudos on your promptness in your agenda work. I'm impressed. So I know you have a long agenda tonight and plenty to do. And so really we just wanted to come in here, introduce ourselves, let you know that for me personally, I've been doing town council work for over 30 years, and I've been working with boards of health the entire time. So I understand that you're a pretty sophisticated board and that you know your stuff. So we won't expect to have a lot of interaction with you, but if you need us, we've had plenty of experience with Title V and many of the other Board of Health type issues. I'm going to hand it over to Alex, who joined us from DPH a little over a year ago, so she can tell you a little bit about her experience and if we can help you or if you can take advantage of our experience, we'd be pleased to work with you.
So thanks, Tom. I'm Alexandra Rubin. I'm an attorney with Miaris and Harrington. I guess time flies when you're having fun, Tom, because I've been with you for like 2.5 years.
Seems like a blink.
Right? We've been busy. Prior to joining Tom's firm, I was Deputy General Counsel at DPH for close to 7 years. And in that role, I did a lot of things at DPH. I worked with a lot of local boards of health through their Office of Local Health. I was the state emergency preparedness attorney, which made the last 1.5 years quite interesting from my perspective of having gone and worked on the state side of things to having to flip it and work with municipalities on the municipal side of public health and public emergency preparedness. But other than that, one of my subspecialties at the firm is working with boards of health. I do pretty much all of the COVID work for our towns, from shutting it down to opening it back up again to shutting it down again, depending on what the towns are looking for in terms of policies and procedures. And I do a lot of work with towns with respect to vaccination and mask mandates and things like that. I work with boards of health for just general regulatory work. I've done a lot of work recently with some boards on tobacco issues, housing code issues, food truck issues, so the whole myriad of things that may come up with the board of health. That's sort of my jam. So I'd be happy to work with you in any capacity that you might need me.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much. You have a very interesting background, and I'd like to speak to you sometime about certain things that you mentioned.
Absolutely.
Andrew, did I shut something off on the big screen, on the big TV?
Having technical difficulties. That's right. We can wave.
Sorry, guys, I shut off.
Screen is black.
No?
Wrong TV.
Oh, I'm like, what the heck?
Put the remote down, Betsy. I know. Step away from the remote.
Oh, there she is. Yay!
Perfect.
Hi again. Sorry, you weren't there for a minute.
Yeah, I'd be happy to chat with you.
Yeah, that's great. I love emergency preparedness. I do that in the capacity of being a veterinarian. So that's wonderful. We have a lot to chat about. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, and if we can be of any help in any other context, please don't hesitate to call us. We're looking forward to working with you and the rest of the town, and we'll stand down now and let you get to the rest of your agenda unless you have any specific questions for us.
Any questions? No? Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Nice to meet you both.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. And look, we are like right on schedule.
Yeah, we are.
So we have a meet and greet with our new health agent, Matt Tennis.
Matt.
Good evening, board.
Hi.
Good to meet you. I know a little different with Zoom, but I'm definitely happy to be working with Medicom Public Health Alliance and with that with the town of Norfolk. I'm happy to have the opportunity. I've been in local public health for just about 14 years now, and certainly definitely am a huge proponent of shared services, and that's what this position is allowing for. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity to working with all three towns and moving forward with inspections from the sanitarian side, so the food, housing, nuisances, things like that.
Any questions for Matt?
Yeah.
No?
Matt, just obviously you're working with three towns, but do you have time that you'll be setting aside specifically for Norfolk? Not to deal with issues, but just as general to be, I guess, a resource around here, whether it's an hour or two, or dovetailing it with some of the other business you may have in town. So instead of 2 hours, you're going to be spending 4 hours here or something. Is that what you're thinking, or are you looking at just if something arises, then you shuffle your schedule around and come to town?
Right. So between the three towns, schedule has been worked out for me. So I will be in Norfolk Mondays from 12 noon to 4, and Thursdays from 9 to noon. And of course, any emergencies or issues that come up, that'll be flexible with the three towns. But I do have office space and a phone line in town hall, so I will be available. Certainly, during those 7 hours, I'll be out and about doing inspections as well. But I do have space in town hall, and we'll have some hours within the building.
Okay, thanks.
Great.
Yeah. Matt and I have been working together the last couple of weeks, so it's been great.
Good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We actually yesterday attended a training for new food inspectional software called Food Code Pro. So Matt used that today for the first time, and it worked out well, so, right, Matt?
Yep, couple little things I just need to address on our end for some preset languages and things like that to make it run a little smoother. But it worked out very well, and I'll be happy to use that software going forward for sure. It's a big improvement over the old paper forms, so it looks good, and I think it'll work out well for the town.
So,
Is that software something that's recommended by the state, or is that something we chose, or the Metacomet Health Alliance chose in
yeah,
particular?
I know Matt might be able to tell us a little bit more about how that came to be, but I think it was the Metacomet Public Health Alliance. Is it because that's what Franklin was already using, Matt?
Yeah, Franklin is already using it, and it I think it's going to be used between all three towns. Just helps streamline everything a little bit better. I know a good number of towns throughout the state are using it. I believe even the state is currently using it. The other part of it, there's the Food Code Pro, which is for the food inspections, and there's the Housing Code Pro, which is for the housing. The State Department of Community Sanitation, which deals with the housing code, has actually been a big part of the development of that housing code program. So we'll be, I believe it's more the trial phase right now, but we'll be utilizing that as well. But I do know a good number of towns and other agencies are using this program, and it's working out very well.
Great, good. Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming and speaking with us.
Of course.
See you around town hall.
Yeah, stop in and see Matt, Mondays and Thursdays.
All right, good.
Thank you, Matt.
All right.
Welcome. Have a good night.
All
Thank
right,
you.
have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.
See you on Monday.
So now we have Olivia Dufour from the Metro West Tobacco Control District Tobacco Compliance with an update. Hi, Olivia.
Hi everyone, good evening. Thank you so much for having me to the board and to Betsy. I really appreciate it. I'm happy to come anytime. I'm just here to give some quick updates about some of the tobacco stuff that we've been working on. So for those who may not remember me, I know it's been a little while. My name is Olivia Dufour. I am the program manager for the Metro West Tobacco Control District. We cover 13 cities and towns in the Metro West area and are based out of Framingham, Department of Public Health, which is where I am currently. And our district obviously includes Norfolk. So we've been very busy over the last little while. This past spring, we completed some retail education inspections. Those went really well. And we spent the summer sort of regrouping and getting ready to do compliance checks, and that is what I'm here to update you about today. Compliance checks are unannounced structured inspections where we send in a trained youth buyer who is under the age of 21 without an ID, where they attempt to purchase a tobacco product. So we give them the money, they go in without anything on them, ask to purchase a tobacco product, and are either turned away or are sold a tobacco product without showing an ID. We did the compliance checks in Norfolk, I don't want to get the date wrong, on August 31st, so almost exactly a month ago. And we did have one sale. So one store in Norfolk did sell to our youth, but that fine has been issued and paid, and it is seemingly all set. And we will be doing some further education and outreach with all the stores, just to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Right, and you did a reinspection there.
Yes.
And they passed, so, which is good.
Exactly.
So,
Yes, I did a reinspection there on Tuesday of this week, and they passed that inspection.
That's great. I'm very impressed.
yeah.
And so who actually sends them a fine? Does somebody come in person? Do they just contact the owner of the store, or is there specific education for both the owner and the personnel who are working in the store? How does that work?
So, following a sale, the protocol is that I call the business within 24 hours. I try my best to get in touch with the manager or a owner in that time, just to let them know that gives them time to review any camera footage that they might have. You know, sometimes folks don't keep that footage for very long, so it's good to give them a heads up so they can go and review it if they so choose. And then from there, we send the correction order by certified mail. So that way we have a return receipt that shows that it was delivered and handed to someone at that establishment. And then from there, they have 7 days to request a hearing. That process looks a little bit different than it did before because of the new state law. And then they have 21 days from the date that they received the order to pay the fine. And those are issued by me and Betsy together, so we both sign off on that order.
And who actually gets the money for the fine? Is it the state or is it
No,
us?
I think we get it.
We do, and it
Okay.
actually goes into a tobacco revolving account, so
Okay.
that in the future, if we need it for education or compliance checks, we have the money in an account.
That was actually, I think, one of the warrants at town meeting.
It
wasn't
was,
it?
yep.
Yeah.
Yep,
Something was said about
last year
tobacco
maybe.
account. Yeah,
So we have the money.
that's right.
So,
Well, that's awesome. That's really interesting. Thank you so much for doing that and educating people who sell tobacco to not sell it to underage people.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? Any questions? No. All right. Well, thank you very much, Olivia. I appreciate you coming.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and I'm happy to come back anytime you guys have any tobacco-related questions or concerns.
Great. We like the balloon in the background. Was it somebody's birthday?
Thank you. It was my 1-year work anniversary 2 days ago.
Oh, okay.
So I was given the balloon.
I can see you kind of waving in and waving back out.
I know. I realized that after. I was like, oh no! But I'm glad that it brought a little joy maybe to this meeting.
Absolutely.
thank you, Olivia.
Thank
Have
you.
Have a nice weekend.
Thanks.
Thank you too.
All right, moving on to the minutes. We have to review and approve the meeting minutes from July 27th. Anybody have any questions or comments?
The only thing for the run and gun, I know Betsy had checked with the fire chief about if they have permits and basically they don't keep enough to require a permit. Should we put that in there even though that was after the meeting?
Sure, we can certainly add that.
I would just, yeah, I would add saying it wasn't there. And I'm going to admit to the rest of the board, I have been a little bit tied up with the two of the other topics on the agenda for tonight to finish all my email I said I'd promise I'd send to the board and the planning board.
Did you have anything?
I did not. Again, I did a quick one, but yeah.
So, I can make a motion to accept the minutes with the addition regarding there are no requirements for the storage from the Norfolk Fire Department.
Here in a second.
Second.
Sweet. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the minutes from July 27th are approved and accepted. Okay.
Betsy, I'll catch up with you next week.
Just move
So,
right along.
that's fine.
So our new/old business, we have agent appointments with terms to expire June 30th of 2022.
So the only change I have to that is Mark Oram. We won't be needing his services after October 31st, so you might want to just change that term expiration date.
Okay.
To October 31st, 2022.
2022 or
I mean,
2021?
2021, excuse
Okay.
me.
All right. So do we need to
We need to make a motion.
read, or this is all good? So, all right, so please, feel free to
All
make
right,
a
so I'll make
motion.
a motion to, the term for expiring on October 31st is Mark Orm for sanitation for restaurant inspections and housing code inspections. Wade Saucier and Tom Houston are health agents. Betsy Fejol, VOH executive assistant. Carol Green, town clerk for issuing burial permits. Mac Tanis, Metacomet Public Health Alliance health agent. Hillary Cohen, animal advisory agent. Ed Nolan, emergency preparedness agent, to have their appointments with the term to expire 6/30/22.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we have approved all our agent appointments with expiration terms.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
So, as you know, that we're having a flu clinic next week at the senior center with our new public health nurses. It's open to Norfolk residents from 9 to 11. Is the for the seniors 65 and older. We have 50 high doses available. I believe all of the spots are filled.
Wow.
People can register online. The link is posted on the town website, and it was also pushed out to the various Facebook pages. And then there are some spots available for 3 to 5 p.m. for 18 years and older. Again, the link is available on the town website.
Terrific.
And then if people do want flu shots, and can't get an appointment for that day, they can also schedule with the Rentham nurses at their office in Rentham.
Great. So will this be the one and only flu clinic this season?
I think so. I think so. They are running some other clinics in other towns, so I think this is the only one that we're doing in Norfolk at the moment.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Get your
All
flu
right.
shot, people.
That's right.
Get your flu shot. I already made my appointment. Getting it then.
Getting mine at work next week.
I haven't signed up yet. I can work on that. Okay. All right. Next, we have some COVID-19 updates. Do you have anything in specific you wanted to say, or I will just jump into what I was going to say? Okay. So I did get a phone call from the Massachusetts Department of Public Health regarding some information about how vaccinated people are documented within our community. There was a question that was posed by a citizen to one of our select board members that suggested that the population of the prison in Norfolk was not included in our population numbers, and that is not true. They are included in our population numbers. So that's why there's some disparity with how the COVID-19 vaccination rates are being recorded. I spoke with Catherine Brown, who's the state epidemiologist, who also informed me that there are different ways that vaccinations are recorded by the organizations that are administering them. So some vaccines are recorded at the site in which they are administered, and some vaccines are recorded for the towns in which the people who are getting the vaccine live. And so the state at this point is having difficulty kind of merging that data, but that's why some of the numbers don't look equal to, let's say, if you look up the population of that community. So I just wanted to clarify that for everybody, that yes, the prison population is included in our vaccination numbers. Any questions about that? No? Good, okay. All right, next on the agenda is the Southwood Hospital, 111 Dedham Street Public Involvement Plan update. Would that be you, Andy?
Can we skip to Buckley-Mann, because that one's a lot easier for starters?
Would you like to do that one first?
If we could.
Okay,
If we
sure,
could.
sure.
Well, as you saw the email from Rich McCarthy about the EPA. I am plowing through that. Couple issues truly from a technical scientific perspective. The previous concentrations of PCBs and other materials that they found, they didn't go back and resample those to confirm they were there. That's the first issue. The second issue deals with their exposure point concentrations and developing exposure points. Typically, it's ingestion, inhalation, and direct contact with your skin. They simply use the model of an ATV rider kicking dust up. So there's a few holes that are there. So that's some of the problems. They put some assumptions in there, and if you saw the table about the PCBs that were found, they had the comment professional judgment. Obviously, they didn't define what professional judgment is, and actually having gone out to the site walk in March of this year with the EPA, when we talked about the PCBs that were found, especially the species 1268, which is an unusual PCB to find in 40 years. This is the second time I've seen this. And the first time we clearly identified it as came from a military vehicle, and sure enough, there's photographs that show the vehicles there. Aero photographs even from the Mass DOT show the vehicles were there. And the best way to describe it, there was a big circle around under these vehicles, so they were leaking for a while. So that's the only time I've ever seen it prior to this. They really don't explain how they're justifying saying professional judgment doesn't mean this is a risk. I've got to do some more research on trying to find this. Two things that you should know just about this 1268. Normal room temperatures, even cold temperatures, it's a solid. So the question is, how did it get where it is? So the thinking is, did they, there's the burn pit, the carbonizer pit where they used to burn stuff. Did they put stuff there so it got to a high enough temperature where it could flow? Don't know. They didn't bring that up as a model of how the contamination could move. So that's one of the things. The other thing is other PCBs. They did find the 1242 and 1236, which is common. You find in transformers. That's pretty much no brainer. I mean, those are the known. Those are known sources of that compound. So, but again, they just said professional judgment. Well, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, saying, yeah, we probably think they're from transformers, but they never really say that. Right. So there's some holes. So I need to sort of dissect, cut things apart, and try to make a story up with the first set of data they collected and the second set of data, and point out where the holes are. But again, the big issues are the model and how they decided that it's not worth any further action. But again, I mean, realize that the state level for PCB contamination, where they considered a risk to human health and the environment, is 1 part per million. We were over 300. Wow. So the reason why the response action outcome or the closure report was rescinded now, is that 3 years ago? Almost 3 years ago. The ecological risk assessment, which looks at the contamination, the impacts to the environment, so the fish, the bugs and bunnies, as I call it, that was never done. And that's one thing. And the EPA doesn't even look at that in their assessment. So we're dealing with two regulations here that kind of have slightly different goals, but there is some overlap. So, and some of that overlap just doesn't exist, which they should. They should be talking about how the state and federal regulations do interact. So, needless to say, I've got some more work to do. I'm happy to do it because I remember when that whole area was cleaned up. I mean, it was on the Concom with Tom. So it's definitely an issue, and I know that there's the no fishing signs and the catch and release. Should be checked. I know that there should be a push to try and think about fencing off some of that area because I know people walk their dogs, and I know people. There are trespassers. People do probably hunt as well. But again, I mean, it's pretty evident by the trails that have been beaten down that yes, there is ATV use and motorcycle use out there too. So, okay. So that was the easy one. So Southwood. Bottom line is that the deadline for the comments back to the Public Involvement Plan Group, that's been missed. That was now, well, next Monday it'll be 2 months late. Right. September 9th, there was a phase 2 scope of work that was due that basically identified the actions to continue assessment as well as identify areas that need to be remediated. That deadline was missed as well.
And is that the deadlines were missed by GFI?
GFI and the LSP. As you saw in the email, I
kind of asked that question to Rich McCarthy, that he had sent out. And said they said they talked about it in the field, but really didn't define a set deadline. That aside, I think the other bigger issue of the radiation, this is way beyond my comfort zone in terms of understanding. I understand after seeing that report and what they found and how they decided, I understand how they came up with that it's above background concentrations. It's because that radioactive isotope, as it decays, you get certain alpha, beta, gamma X-rays that come out, and they simply look at the ratio, and when you kind of work backwards in the totals, and using the formulas they have, they can determine that yes, there was that material was there, and it's not natural. It's radon and radium isn't actually occurring, and if you had radon tests in your house, that's where it's coming from. But they found those in levels high enough where it definitely is it's a problem, that it's above background.
Well, radium, that was very common for treatment of cancer, especially, with the pellets, so.
Yeah, the documentation is, well, actually, the documentation of the use of radium is documented in the Leland book. I don't know if you've ever seen that. There's that, and then also, I believe one of the members of the PIP group has actually found the transfer of the material to the hospital. They found the state records, so that's been confirmed that it's been there. So I'm not sure, if we should just sort of wait and see what the DPH is going to do, because the DP has deferred to them because under the mass contingency plan, which handles other contamination types, whether it's petroleum or non-petroleum, radiation isn't covered under the mass contingency plan. So this kind of creates a whole different ball of wax that we're dealing with. Obviously, the site should be secured. It's not secured. I know that was one of the requirements, that they would secure those areas. They found those high levels, but the actual rest of the site, I don't know. Should we posted that they should be no trespassing? I know the fencing around the building is down. I don't know. I don't know what they're gonna do about that. That wasn't reported when they did the sidewalk through a couple weeks ago. But
Is that just trespassers or just age or?
it looks like, well, actually, there's some of the gates that I've seen from some of the drone pictures that have been taken. The gates are clearly have been moved. That's something that was moved because everything is open. There's other areas of the fencing that's been blown over clearly by the wind. You get a little bit of ice on there, and they get blown over. So that's it. I know this is going back 20 years. The landfill had a fence around it that was secure, and I understand that it's basically been cut, knocked over, trees have fallen. So the landfill but the landfill, they didn't look at the landfill because it's so overgrown right now. So, I'd like to, if the board has the intestinal fortitude to try and come up with a plan to try and address this. I mean, do we start open communication with DEP? Do we try to talk to Department of Public Health? Maybe we should have asked Town Council.
Yeah.
It's after the fact. So this is something that we definitely need to look at. So my concern is, if there are trespassers out there, are they being exposed to other things other than just the petroleum that they know about, the other materials they know about? Because the radiation isn't going to be stopped by much other than a lead-lined room. So.
Is there other signage to put up that has skull and crossbones type of thing? It's supposed to no trespassing, which seems just superfluous at some point.
You're looking at. It's a huge area.
Right.
You can see where the water tank is, and up where this says pharmacies. That's the line there. You can see the line of the railroad track, and it goes down to the property goes down to where the Google word is over to Dedham Street at about 10 o'clock. That's that's at least a mile and a half worth of signage that's going to be needed. So again, I'm not sure what the board is thinking. Do you just kind of wait? Maybe we'll get word that they did put the fencing up that's required for tomorrow. But at the same time, I just don't know. I just don't have a good sense of how far we can go start pushing DEP and start talking to DPH a little bit more. So, I don't know what your thoughts are.
So maybe it's a great question for, I think, legal counsel, and maybe have them kind of behind us to ask those questions.
Any way we can bring him back, Betsy?
What's that?
Can we bring Alexa back?
Tom, where'd you go?
Yeah. So I mean, this is not going well for somebody. This is just when I say that, but it's pretty apparent that the GFI did not do their due diligence enough on this piece of property.
Right.
So, because I know from the times I had been out there with Bill Fleming, who was the facility VP. I mean, he had mentioned about things that had been buried in the landfill, which were. It didn't surprise me that the stuff was there. I mean, he simply referred to it as biological tissue waste. So, which, if you sort of connect the dots, it could be incinerated body parts for all you know. But some of the radioactive stuff, since that was found at the wastewater treatment plant, I mean, that's just telling me that the normal course of treatment that people going to the bathroom, it's basically they're expelling the radioactive material. And that wastewater technology treatment that's over there literally is, it's almost 100 years old. And even though they used it till the mid or early 2000s. So.
I guess my concern is only in that the ability to address this has only come about because the purchaser of the property is now responsible. I mean, this has been there for so long.
Well,
but we've been ignoring it until this moment in time and putting it on them.
Let's go back to 2 years ago. I mean, the strategy the Archdiocese of Boston was doing. If you read the reports, and their strategy was simply to say that we're going to find a buyer to do the cleanup of the property. And unfortunately, the DEP allowed that. Yes, you can request extensions under the mass contingency plan, but a lot of those reports only dealt with the known contamination, the chlorinated solvents, the metals, the petroleum. This radioactive material that's a whole new aspect to this that the mass contingency plan doesn't. And like I said, this is out of my comfort zone. I mean, I'm learning as much as I can just by reading and sort of putting two and two together. But it makes sense where they found those too high readings.
So at some point, if nothing ever happens with this property, they decide not to develop it, does it become a toxic waste site? Does EPA step in and?
Well, I mean, the EPA stepped in for Buckley-Mann, and we're no farther along than that. This is an LLC, so they have no assets. So, I mean, I'm not going to say what my opinions are. What I think could happen with the property, just because of the low purchase price. But if you think really hard, I mean, it's for them, it's a very easy exit strategy, and it just leaves the property wallowing. So, the question that needs to be asked, if it's in these two locations, where else is it? I mean, that's something I know the former employee that was there was instructed at points when they cleaned up the two incinerators they had to just dump it in the woods. I'm quite sure most of it probably went to the landfill, but who knows? The roadway up to the water tank that you can see, that's an easy way to get rid of stuff too. And I know from walking when the land was transferred to Walpole, I went with the town of Walpole. We parked in the parking lot and walked up through the woods because there's another road that's parallel to 1A. That I can see the line. There's a couple piles that I noticed that looked kind of strange, just because they were out of place. Everything was flat, and then these piles were there, and then all the vegetation was kind of tortured. I guess that's the best way of putting it. So that's just telling me that there's something there that's causing some sort of stress to the plant. So there's other areas to look at, and I think the emphasis has been, at least on the Archdiocese part, that that this is the work we've done, and this is the area we're going to concentrate on. But there's a lot more here that hasn't been looked at.
So does the state or federal government step in at some point to clean it up, or do they just cover it with like 3 feet of concrete and declare it some nuclear zone?
I mean, let's see. For the radioactive stuff, let's put that aside for a second. The petroleum material, what I've read in the reports and what I've seen and what I think is happening is the tunnel system and the excavations that were put in from the old buildings that have been torn down. It sure looks like the petroleum is following the tunnel system, the excavation. But unfortunately, with the original 17 wells that were put in, there's only 4 that are usable now. So you kind of lost any type of control and any definition of where the plume has gone. Some of the metals, for a facility that's this old, and given that it was a military operation at one point back in the early 1900s, you're probably getting, you probably have some typical waste products that are from that. I mean, it's common to find metals as well. If we look at the radioactive stuff, that's Department of Public Health, that's the Radiation Control Division that's going to have to deal with that. If they start finding, higher levels, it's, all I can say is that Norton had a similar radioactive dump site. Took 10 years to clean up. And actually what they ended up doing is they ended up putting an activity use limitation on it, meaning that you really can't do much there. Just because they couldn't clean it to background levels. And it's documented that they did dump waste uranium there as well as radium waste. So, but here, you're looking at, the normal operation of the facility, and realize if you can see where the bottom of the hospital point is, and that green area down there, that's where the wastewater treatment plant, the beds are. I mean, this is 10, 15, 20 acres of stream as well as infrastructure. And the question is, how far did it go?
Right.
Did it go? Is it down into the Stop River or Stop River that's actually off the map?
So who's typically in charge?
Right now, I think, for the radiation, DPHs.
Yeah.
Okay.
For the petroleum contamination, it's going to be and the metal stuff, that's Mass DEP. And, as I said before, the LSP as well as the responsible party, they're late. They're simply late. I know that the response, I don't know if you read the 11 pages that the Public Involvement Plan Group, I read that to the point where I understand where they're coming from. The mixing of the radioactive stuff, even though it wasn't part of the MCP,
Right.
Hopefully it was duly noted, because I think that's part of the problem. It's not all the problem. And I think the folks at GFI and probably the LSP were overwhelmed by the fact that there's so much information that's in there, and I don't know. I just don't know why they haven't responded saying, look, we need an extension, or we have some questions. I know that the PIP group has sent them the Leland book, which is a fascinating read.
Right.
If you've read it.
I've gone through some of it, and I also spoke to Joanne Yatsuhashi about some of the stuff. So
Yeah. And Joanne seems to know a lot more the stuff that's out there.
Yeah.
Joanne used to work. She was a nurse there for 40 years. Her husband.
her husband was
Chief of surgery.
chief of surgery
Yeah.
up there. So they lived on site in the cottages,
Yeah.
and back when it was truly a cancer hospital before it ended up becoming Southwood.
So,
In that book, I'm sorry, I don't know what that.
do you have a copy of that?
I scanned it, I had it electronically.
Yeah,
wanna-
I think you sent it to us.
I think I did.
Yeah, you
Oh,
did send it to us.
Okay, I will.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
it's
I'll look at that.
it's
Yeah.
one of those things that I would have probably flipped through it really quick and said, okay, this is interesting. But now it's sort of bringing everything into a context that, yes, there probably was something. But to answer your question about, so what happens? Well, obviously, if you work back through the state, it's state ownership. When Scott Brown was state rep or state senator, I can't remember which one, he actually had said he had requested $7.5 million for cleanup out there, not knowing the radiation stuff did exist, but looking at the other things. I actually did some research, this is now probably a year ago, and I contacted someone I knew from corrections who's now in the state controller's office and told her what I was looking for and gave her as much information as I could. She could not find any appropriation, even though there was a bill that was actually submitted. Apparently it didn't pass the first time through because the session ended, and then it was passed, as they said, as a supplemental budget. But a supplemental budget to do a remediation project that could extend multiple years it's just not the normal procedure. But she indicated that, there may be something else there, but I mean, she was pretty exhaustive, and I trust her, because having worked with her for 10 years, she knows how to find stuff, but I didn't have an appropriation number, and that's the one thing that would definitely help, but the legislation never had an appropriation number, so there might have been a little bit of effort, a little bit of window dressing, as I call it, saying that they were trying to do it, but it just never got passed, so that's probably a dead end at this point.
Yeah.
But is the state responsible for some of this? I mean, the state accepted the radioactive material to do the
Right.
research.
Right.
So, is that a smoking gun? Probably. Does that mean they're liable? And again, it's safe to say that at the time they were doing this research with this material, was that accepted practices?
It
Probably was.
It probably was accepted practice, and also how they treated the patients. I mean, radium was very popular in doing the radium implants for tumors because you didn't have any other options at that point in time, so,
Yep.
yeah. And then for the fact that it was purchased by Norwood when it was part of the Ponza Valley Health System, and then the whole thing was purchased by Caritas. And then when Stewart came along, Stewart only purchased Norwood and said they weren't touching the Southwood property, so they didn't, that stayed with the diocese, so.
Yeah, so that, the responsible, I'll call it, the backwards paper trail of the responsible
Yeah.
party is so convoluted.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you assign culpability or percentage of responsibility?
Right.
Do you look at the number of hours they owned it, or
Right.
is it the number of years, or is it the number of patients? If
Right.
that's the case, when Southwood was closing down, when they had, so let's say 30 staff there and maybe
Yeah.
2 patients, okay, well, they get a pass because of that. But when there was 100 patients or
Right.
more
Right.
back, 50, 60 years ago,
Yeah.
I don't know. This is a good one. This is a good one.
Interesting stuff, wow.
So,
Wow, thank you.
and I will see if I can dig up. Apparently, there were some trespassers that put on YouTube a site walkthrough a couple weeks ago.
Oh, a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
I know that there's some ghost hunters that have put stuff up that they have, seen ghosts wandering through there, so.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I was at McLean Hospital for a project,
Mm-hmm.
and there's definitely, I'm not going to say you're feeling somebody tap your shoulder, but there's stuff there.
There's stuff there.
Believe me,
So the veterinary school is actually built on the grounds of the Massachusetts State Mental Hospital in Grafton. So when we first moved in there were many buildings on the campus that were still buildings that they had not renovated. And so there were several with bars on the windows, and basements full of bathtubs. I guess cold water therapy was a big deal. But yeah, but that was when we made jokes that perhaps the inmates hadn't changed much from going to veterinary school there to what had been there previously. But yeah, interesting to see how those buildings are managed.
So, I do know, and Betsy confirmed with me, Rich did submit a technical assistance grant
He did.
for this project to try and either help the town guide us through the maze of things.
I don't know. I'm not sure about this project, but I think for the Buckley-Mann.
For Buckley-Mann, they did, but this one I thought he did too. That was, I'd have to go back and confirm in the
Okay.
email. I think they may have submitted it.
I can't confirm that, so you'll have to check with Rich.
So, I guess the question is, where do we go from here? I think maybe stay tuned, but, I think at the same time, probably next meeting, probably just talk about, should we require that they put postings? I'm hoping that the Radiation Control Board has a more detailed report. Again, I know my only dealings with radiation was a project in New York 35 years ago, where the guy said, and it was actually there was a uranium mine there, and the guy with a Geiger counter said, if it's clicking a lot, just move away from it.
Yeah.
I mean, that was his screening. Here they have numbers, and they don't have them in rads or micro rads or millirads anymore. It's in microsieverts. And looking at the numbers, if you using the math and the conversion factors, I mean, these are unusually high for. It's definitely not background.
I think Karen Riley has a question.
No, not a question. I was just going to chime in with a couple of things, just to kind of add to what Andy was saying. As a member of the PIP team, I just wanted to mention that we did send Mass DEP an email on September 22nd asking or requesting that Betsy be forwarded or copied on any correspondence as far as the newly found radiation levels. She be,
No, you, oh, me, okay.
yeah, I can actually forward you the email we sent her. We also requested a public database be available as well for any new information that goes along with the radiation stuff, since it is outside of the mass contingency plan stuff.
It's safe to say that it's not only DEP it's not only us that's dealing with new territory. It's also DEP that's dealing with new territory. You know, I know the Norton site and a few other sites that there's been radiation. You know, that's been the primary issue. Yes, there's been other contamination there, but that's been dealt with. So this one definitely is an interesting. It's an interesting.
Yeah, and the one thing I was going to add about the Norton that I've been doing a lot of reading on, that was actually only 4 or 4.5 acres of land compared to what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, the cleanup
And
is about
it's
2
that
years.
long to clean up. So, that's it.
Oh, thank you. All right, well, that was interesting, very, okay. So we are moving on to setting our meeting schedule for the 4th Tuesday of each month. So are we all set for October 26th? Awesome.
The 4th Tuesday of November, isn't that Thanksgiving?
It is the 23rd.
Oh, no, sorry, that's the 4th Thursday, never mind. Today's Thursday, so Tuesday.
Sorry,
That's
I
fine,
know.
that's perfect.
Depending, we'll have to see how things go. I may be away that week, so we'll figure it out.
On the December meeting on the 28th,
Yeah.
if we could move that to the Tuesday earlier, to the 21st, would that be a problem? I know one reason why is that we may be actually extending our long weekend.
That's a challenge for me because I have another commitment on that Tuesday. We can do a different day of the week before, that's fine.
We can kind of play it by ear too
Yeah.
to see what we have.
Yeah.
And it is definitely right between the holidays.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
maybe we can just hold off and
Depending on how much new business we have.
Yeah.
Maybe we meet
Yes.
after the first of the
so,
year.
Yeah.
right.
Okay, so we'll just put a question over
Okay, yep.
the 28th, and then we're still thinking that the 23rd,
is okay.
that's okay?
Oh, do we,
Unless
oh, yeah,
Betsy's-
we said,
unless
oh,
Betsy's-
yeah, okay.
Unless
Yep.
Betsy's off, then we
Yeah,
can look
I'll
at.
keep you posted on that.
Just put a question mark on both.
No, all my volunteer work is on a Tuesday evening. So everyone has meetings on Tuesdays.
Awesome. All right. Is there any unanticipated new business this evening? Anybody? No? Okay. No new business. All right. We have completed our agenda for this evening. Would anyone like to entertain a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good. We are a time